Hey, Messengers listeners, welcome to this week's episode. On today's episode, we are talking about the do's and don'ts of website redesign, some of the things you need to worry about, some of the things you need to try to avoid, things that you need to make sure are handled properly when you do decide that your website needs a little bit of an update. We also do a little bit of a deep dive on website maintenance, why it's important, and some of the things that you need to look out for when it comes to maintaining your website. Stay tuned. Welcome, everybody, to the Messengers podcast. I am Chris Searles, and with me here today, of course, is the apple of my eye, Mr. Rob Seifert.
All right.
That just got a weird look from James over in the corner. A little weird? James thinks that was weird. It gets a little weird around here sometimes. Gets late in the day. You never really know what's going to happen.
I'm a little uncomfortable.
That's good. Usually you're the one making everybody else uncomfortable, so figured I would try my hand at it. So what's going on, Rob?
Oh, today, busy as anything,
Good.
Just
stay busy.
Trying
That's how we
to
pay the bills.
get the work done and answer the phones here.
And record a podcast.
Right. Well, here we go.
That's always the best part when Rob's running around like a chicken with his head cut off, and I grab him for an hour and a half to sit in a room and talk to me.
This is my break.
Yeah. Breaks. Nobody gets breaks around here. Come on. So I was sitting with a client the other day. We were talking about website redesign. It kind of got me thinking about the way that we approach website redesigns here, and the way that we prefer to approach them. Whether or not our clients listen to us is a different story. Most of the time they don't, which is probably better off, I guess. But it always kind of surprises me how our clients are always kind of so ready to rip apart what they have and start fresh, and how we're kind of the voices of reason, or try to be the voices of reason on, we don't really have to do that. Sometimes we do. I guess we can talk a little bit about when that is and when we would recommend, rip it apart and start fresh.
Yeah.
But certainly there are times when a more measured approach is warranted. Certainly is less expensive up front. We kind of talk ourselves out of a project, or I try to talk myself out of a project when we do that. But ultimately, certainly would be something that is better for the client.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where I think most people kind of see, well, it's new and shiny, and that's good. And that's going to be a good thing is for me to kind of get rid of this thing that I've had for 3 years and start with something that's brand new, and people are going to love that and love seeing something brand new. And, some people might, and you might get a lot of people that do. But a lot of automated systems and technologies, namely Google, don't really like that as much. And a lot of times even your users are not going to be super happy about it, I guess, depending on the quantity of traffic that you get. I mean, anytime Facebook changes anything, it's
Everyone
people have a
grumbles.
shit fit.
Yeah.
And it could be a really positive layout change, but people are always going to complain about that kind of stuff because, something that they've gotten so used to, I know where this is, all of a sudden is gone, and they got to figure it out.
Yeah, I see it, two ways. I guess that would be the decision that we'd have to make if we were going to recommend a rebuild, design, and the back end, how it's built. Those are, a couple of the considerations I would say would be primary.
Yeah, most of our clients are kind of, we don't do website work for Facebook, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But, so most of our clients don't really have the issue as far as users that are so accustomed to what their website looks like and how it functions that, changing something small is going to cause a major issue. For us, usually it's more of a marketing issue where you might have a desire to change something that doesn't need to be changed. And that's really more what we try to focus on is identifying whether something really needs to be changed. Once you've kind of identified the thing that you want to change, test a new version of that little thing, not ripping apart your whole website, but my homepage isn't really driving people to the place that I want it to drive people to, or they don't seem to be finding the information that they're looking for. Maybe I can change my hero image and my primary call to action on that page and see if that helps. And doing that versus saying my website's really not working and it's kind of old, let's just throw it away and start from scratch, means you're just throwing darts at a board again. You're guessing as far as what's going to work, and you're going to build something that looks nice. And we talked about that a few episodes back as far as just kind of data-driven design as a whole. I guess this is more of a deep dive into that, how that applies to your website specifically. But that you don't want to be throwing darts at a wall. You want to know what works, know what doesn't work, try to change and improve the stuff that doesn't work, and keep the stuff that works.
So it's kind of just jumping back to what you said, that when you said Google doesn't like that, if you tear down a site and rebuild it. I mean, there's an adverse effect if you've had a site up for 4 years and you've done minimal updates to it, and you come in to the company and you say, tear it down. I mean, what's the downside to that?
Depends. If the company that you're working with is good at what they do, there shouldn't be one. But it is one of the things that we have to talk to people about, and we have to, especially if they're comparing us to a competitor that might not do the things that they should be doing. And especially on the small business side of things, a lot of, quote unquote web designers aren't really web designers. They know how to use WordPress, or they, and deploy a template and a theme. And again, they know how to make something look nice. But a lot of the really kind of finer technical details that are really important, especially if you're talking about a redesign, is stuff that they're not going to bring to your attention because they don't really know that it's something they need to be dealing with. And you don't know enough to know that it's something they need to be dealing with. And it's important. So the biggest thing that we look at with that is what happens to all of your old links. You have the same problem if you want to change a domain name or things like that. And we had a client recently that was talking about changing their domain name. And that was, question number one is okay, well, we need to handle that the right way here. Here's what we need to do. Here's why it's a little more involved than just saying, well, people are going to go here now instead of going there. And so the primary issue you need to worry about is somebody either had an old link in there, stored as a bookmark, right? Which is a great thing if you can get somebody to bookmark one of your pages that they're going to frequently enough that they want to save it that way. So you want to make sure that those continue to work. From a search engine standpoint, Google has your site indexed in their search index, and those pages are ranked by Google a certain way. What happens if that page disappears tomorrow and a new page takes its place? Well, you're kind of starting from square one in terms of your search results for that new page versus the old page, unless you handle it the right way. Links from other websites, which again then also have an effect on your search ranking. The number of other websites that link into your site, Google takes as a kind of a vote of confidence in your website, so that matters in terms of how well your website ranks. And again, you don't want all of those links to end up as broken links where somebody wrote an article about you, which is awesome, but then the link that they put in there goes to a page that doesn't exist on your site anymore because you just kind of chopped it down and put something else in there. So the way that we handle that primarily are through what we call a 301 redirect. And not to get too into the weeds on the technical side of things, but the bottom line is that tells any piece of technology that's looking for that page that, hey, it doesn't exist here anymore. It's been permanently moved to this new location. It's like a change of address with the post office. When you move, you don't just move
Hmm.
and decide that, well, people are going to find me at my new address. Hopefully, you move, you fill out a change of address form so that everything that was going to your old house or business or whatever now actually is going to end up in the right place.
Right.
So that those are some of the things that are important to look at when you say, look, I'm just going to rip down everything that I have and just start from scratch and not even worry about the fact that that stuff existed and has a history on the internet that you can't really scrub and do anything about.
Yeah, certainly sounds like a more functional way to deal with it. Really didn't, think it that far through. Understand a little bit better now. I mean, I get a lot of people that call me that, built their sites years ago in programs like Dreamweaver or something like that, and they're still doing their own maintenance. But typically what I see with those is they're just, the technology behind them is limited. They're not mobile ready. They're not scalable, things like that. In instances like that where it's that old, would a rebuild be recommended at that point, or
Kind of depends.
really still?
Sometimes, so that's where you get into an analysis of what you really have. For the most part, from a cost standpoint, for example, if you have a website that's not at all mobile friendly, it's not responsive,
Mm-hmm.
and it just looks like garbage on a mobile device. Most of the time, that's when you're going to say, all right, well, we need a redesign. But that being said, that doesn't mean that you need to throw out everything that existed on that website and completely start from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it kind of benefits you to be able to have the information, the data, the analytics, heat maps or whatever it is that you need to justify what you're going to change and why you're going to change it. Because you might have elements on that website that are great, that are extremely functional, that are driving a lot of results. And unless you have any data to support either that those exist or that they don't exist, and you're just not getting any value out of your website, that's where you got to kind of make a judgment call there. Most of the time, if it's that old, we've been building responsive websites for long enough now where if your site's not there, it might be old enough where it kind of warrants, like, all right, we might take a lot of the same content, we might repackage it a little bit, we might even look to do this, with the same site structure, the same routing scheme, all that kind of stuff, or maybe we'll update that for SEO purposes, but make sure that we do it the right way. But that's where it really comes down to evaluating individually. But yeah, at some point, you get to the point where you got to do a gut job. You got to tear the whole thing kind of apart and decide you're going to rebuild it from scratch. So it's not that it's never the right idea, but it's more about evaluating whether or not it's the right thing for you to do. If you have a site that's 2 years old and you're just a little tired of the way that it looks, that doesn't mean that it's time to tear the whole thing apart and rebuild something brand new from scratch. You're certainly not going to be better served doing that than you would be identifying the areas of the site that really need improvement, right, and working on improving those before you just do a gut job.
I guess the analogy is sort of like a car,
I thought I just
Did you say
compared it to a house.
Well, I'm really saying a car would be better.
I apologize. Come on, continue. I want to hear the car analogy.
That's it. It's a car. I was going to ask about support and maintenance too. I mean, I guess if you're taking care of your car and taking care of your website, that a complete rebuild is going to be a lot less likely. If you're keeping your website updated and current, that it's not going to be a consideration in terms of the functionality of it, at least.
Yeah, we see concepts that run the gamut depending on the client. It's less frequent, but we certainly have clients that ask about ongoing maintenance. How's that going to work, and what do we do, and how do we make sure everything stays up to date, and that's great when they bring that up and realize that that's important. On our side of things, we always push for some sort of ongoing maintenance, just from a technology standpoint. Doesn't matter what you're using to drive your website, whether you're using a content management system, like WordPress or Joomla, Drupal, which please don't, but different story. But those all need to be updated. They need to be maintained, right? There's bugs that are found all the time. There's new versions, new features. They're open source, so especially when it comes to plugins and things like that, there's people that are always looking for exploits and looking at ways that they can hack into those sites, and so they need to be maintained. They need to be updated. We had a client who's a print client of ours, but not a website client. This was a couple of years ago, that contacted us. It was a nonprofit organization, contacted us and said, we need a little help. We have porn links all over our homepage, and they, something happened and their website got hacked.
Right.
And they ended up with links to porn all over the homepage of their website. And it was,
Not
a lot
good
of,
for her.
it was like the sweet old lady who is running this nonprofit organization that was sitting there going, how do we take care of this? How do we get this off of here?
Please, quickly, right?
But so maintenance, update, all that stuff is important. It doesn't matter what you're using, what platform you're using. On those platforms, stuff that's open source, that's one of the primary reasons that it's important is security. Right. On the other side of things, it's really a lot of it's just about being current, staying up to date with current technology, and ideally not ending up 3 years from now where you feel like you need to throw your whole website away because you've not done anything to it for 3 years, and the technology's just gotten so old that it's almost more expensive to maintain it than it would be to just build something that's current and new and maintain it from there.
So I guess if somebody was interested, the first thing you would do, like you said, just going back to my car analogy, it would be like doing a diagnostic on their website. You're going to look at the Google Analytics, you're going to look at heat maps and things like that, and suggest things that can be done to the website and things that don't need to be fixed because they're working well.
Yeah, that would be the goal.
Yeah.
And for anybody out there that's listening that is thinking about doing this to their website, that should be the approach.
Okay.
Collect the data, decide what needs to be addressed, what you need to work on. There are plenty of ways to do that. One of a product I like a lot is a website called Crazy Egg, which does heat mapping. You install JavaScript snippet on your website, and they give you a full heat map of all your page. You run tests, and they give you a heat map of what people are actually looking at, where are they stopping when they scroll. They'll do mobile versions and desktop versions. There are a couple other products out there that do the same thing. But it's nice, kind of takes your Google Analytics data, which will give you, hey, somebody, this percentage of your visitors clicked on this button, and really kind of jumps it up a notch and gives you a nice, really cool visual representation of, almost where people's eyes are tracking on your site. So you can see, we've seen it on our own stuff where I go, oh man, that's crazy. That's one of the things that I love the most about our website, and everybody just skips right over it. It's like, the least valuable thing as far as our users are concerned on the whole page, and you get a little bummed out about it, but then you realize, okay, well, it's not working, so let's figure out something new and try something else.
Is that your bio?
Yeah. Anything that's got my face or my voice or anything about me, generally speaking, those zero clicks. That's kind of mean. I take it back. I don't like your car analogy at all.
Well, I'll come up with another one.
Yeah, but going. I'm gonna validate your car analogy because I do actually use that in meetings with clients, and when we talk about things like maintenance and keeping a site up to date. I've had that where you have a customer who says, "Nah, I don't. I just want just build it, leave it, and I'll call you when I need you if I need you." Mm-hmm. And 2 years later, I get a phone call going, "Hey, this isn't working. What's going on? Why doesn't this work?" And I said, "Well, all right. Well, let me find out." Mm-hmm. And I had it happen with a client, and it basically was where I got an angry phone call that people are submitting a form on my website and it's not working. I'm not getting these, and I apparently haven't been getting them for a month or whatever the number is. And I say, okay, and angry at me first that nobody told him that it wasn't working when the response was, well, we tried to sell you a service that would allow us to do that for you. You told me you didn't want to pay for it, so I'm not going to spend time checking your website works all the time constantly if you're not going to pay me for it. At some point, we got to get paid for the work that we do. But when we delivered it, it was functional. Everything was working, and apparently it was functional for about 2 years. And it turned out what happened was the email sender that we use had updated their API like 25 times since the version that we had deployed. Actually, that one wasn't the 25. That was a different story with a payment provider on a different website. But this it gotten to the point where they deprecated the version of the API that we were using to send email, and all of our other customers just had kind of by default been upgraded throughout history because they were paying for us to actively maintain their websites, and we just dealt with that stuff because it was just part of what we did. And this just ended up never getting updated, and they deprecated that version of their API, which basically disallowed anybody from calling into that version and using it, and it caused everything to stop functioning. And my response when I explained what was going on and what it would cost for us to then go in and fix it, which was not a lot of money. It was a couple $100 just to go through, fix it, test it, make sure everything was working, deploy it. And he didn't want to pay that either. And I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. That's, basically like buying a new car, never changing the oil,
right,
and then when your engine seizes, going back to the dealership and saying, how come my car doesn't work? It's because we told you had to maintain it, and you didn't maintain it. Now you got to pay to fix it.
Sure.
That is what it is.
Yeah.
But I did actually use that analogy. So so your car analogy is validated.
Yeah, and I think
as if you needed me to validate it.
Well, I feel a little better about it. I mean, I think it's important that you bring that up. That a lot of times when we sit with clients in a meeting and you speak about the need for support and maintenance, and relate it to technology changing in search engines, Google updating algorithms, and that they can make changes that are going to affect the way your website functions. Search, not just search engines, but web browsers too.
Web browsers
all the time
for sure.
Right. So that's what I mean. It's kind of not fair that someone calls you back and says, "Hey, you built this for me 2 years ago and it doesn't work now," because it's by no fault of yours. Technology grows and changes all the time,
and it changes at
websites
a pace
have to evolve too.
Yeah, and it changes at a pace that's sometimes unmanageable.
Right.
But that's why when that kind of stuff happens. These days it happens with long lead times where people are made aware, hey, we're going to deprecate this. You have 18 months to get off of that version and up to a new version or whatever you got to do. In this instance, it just was something that really wasn't announced. That we almost kind of just got lucky in the fact that we were maintaining everything else well enough that
it didn't
got
affect
updated
the other
and,
site, so
we didn't have to worry about it. But yeah, I mean, it's but to your point about browsers and kind of the whole topic in general, we had, this was years ago, 15 years ago or so, at my my first business, which was a software company. For anybody that doesn't know, I had started a software company with a friend of mine when I was in college, and we ran that business for a few years, and we had a client that had a lot of installs, and at the time we had the piece of software was really complex. It was a server application, it was a web application, it was a couple other server applications that all kind of communicated together, and we integrated with somebody else's systems, and with a couple other manufacturer systems, all that kind of stuff. And it was a really, really complicated, complex piece of software. And one day, basically across our entire ecosystem of installations, it almost all just ceased to function. And we started getting angry phone calls across the board from hey, it's not working, why is your software broken, what's the and we came to find out that it was a hot fix that Microsoft had released for Windows Server that broke our software for whatever. I don't remember exactly what the reason was, but we could track it down specifically to this hot fix that got released, that was updated, on most of their environments because it fixed some other problem, broke our software. And when we started talking about what it was going to cost to fix that problem, for customers that paid for development services, they didn't, wasn't licensed software and stuff like that. It was basically a software as a service model. We got a lot of pushback on that because it was, what are you talking about? This is a bug. You're supposed to fix certain bug and this and that. And we said, but it wasn't a bug yesterday. Everything worked just fine. We can't test software on an operating system that literally didn't exist yesterday. So there's only so much that we can do, but we can't predict the future, and we don't know. Microsoft didn't even know that they were going to have to release that, let alone would we have been able to plan for that, test against it, and make sure that our software was going to work,
Right.
A year and a half into its life, because they deployed a hot fix. And so that stuff happens. It happens all the time. Technology changes, browsers change, operating systems change, and really the biggest contributor to all that over the past 10 years has been mobile devices. Right? We went from a mobile version of your website was a completely stripped down separate code base that had text and links, and that was it. No JavaScript, no images, no CSS, no style sheets,
Right.
none of it, because it was a BlackBerry on a 1X network that didn't have a full text browser. So all it could do was display text and links. And not only that, but it was working on a network that was so slow that it couldn't render an image and download style sheets and actually make any of that a usable experience. And that was what a mobile website was for years, was a completely separate version of your website that had almost zero functionality other than just a link and text. And then the iPhone comes out, and all of a sudden now we're dealing with full text with full text mobile browsers, and we're doing that on 3G networks, which is a better connection, but it's still not great. And now you got to worry about, okay, what is that? How does that website load, and what pictures are you loading on that version versus on your desktop version when somebody's connected, with a plugged-in connection, or when they're on a Wi-Fi connection, or all those kinds of things. And now we've kind of gotten to the point where 4G and Wi-Fi are for the most part ubiquitous. They're, you can take them for granted. Full text browsers you can take for granted, but at the same time, now you need to optimize that user experience for that device, for a mobile device versus a tablet versus a desktop. And then every browser that exists on every one of those devices and what they support. And again, they're all moving towards standards that are going to be positive, that they all actually are on the same standard, because years ago it was, well, we had one version for Internet Explorer and then one version for standards compliant browsers. And now Microsoft's playing nice and has gotten on board with all that stuff. And, on top of the fact that really nobody uses Internet Explorer or Edge or whatever it is anymore. No. But we're kind of moving to that because, the browsers are seeing advantages in the capabilities that developers can take advantage of when they know that every browser is actually going to support those capabilities. But all that stuff, it changes daily, all the time. And it's all stuff that needs to be dealt with and handled and managed for.
Right.
So what else? You got anything else?
I think you
talk too much.
Answered all my questions today.
Yeah, my throat hurts. I always talk a little too much. But I guess that's why we do the podcast, so I don't have to do it to everybody else. I don't have to bug everybody in the office. I can just record it and put it out in the world and hope that people care. Hey, what's up, YouTube? Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Click the links for more from the Messengers and visit us at messengers.blog for links to our social and more exclusive content from the Messengers. Thanks.